Welcome to the Adventure Pro podcast. Today on the podcast, we have Caz Dawson, who lives not too far from me in Wales. Caz, welcome to the Adventure Pro podcast. Who are you and what do you do, please?
Hi, Tom. Thank you and good to meet you. I'm Caz, based in Northeast Wales, owner of SUP Lass Paddle Adventures. I am based on the edge really of the Cludian Range AONB. My playground is predominantly the River Dee, but a lot of the canals, the lakes, the coast, right across North Wales.
Fabulous. So tell us a little bit more about your business and how it sort of started and came about.
So SUP Lass Adventures was born earlier on this year, and it kind of came about after a bit of a sort of a strange way into it, really. I rode for many years, had a horse all of my life, really. Rode competitively, and unfortunately my horse had a tragic accident, so I found myself a new hobby, which happened to be paddleboarding, and it started out just a very social casual thing about 3 years ago, and here I am today running it as a sort of successful little business on the side of a full-time job. But it's just been a fantastic journey, something that's really grabbed my passion, my attention, put 110% in what we do, and I just love giving back and working with other people in the industry.
Wonderful. So give us an idea of what the sort of day-to-day running of your business looks like, because you said that you do this alongside a full-time job. So that must obviously take up a lot of time. So how does that work? You balancing your full-time job and SUP Lass Adventures?
Well, if I'm brutally honest, this summer it has been tough. So 9 to 5, I am a food and drink consultant, and then evenings and weekends I turn into SUPlass. And this summer, I had an idea. I thought, it'll be, there'll be some interest, and obviously the popularity and rise in paddleboarding. But it just kind of exceeded every expectation I could imagine. So if I wasn't sat at my desk, I was out on the water. So sort of Monday to Thursday, I was doing kind of one-to-one lessons in the evenings, and they've only really just wrapped up now. The clocks have changed. Friday nights I was running a SUP club, which was just a huge success. I've been working with mostly women. We've had around sort of 90% attendance has been local women. But I've probably taught just on the Friday over 165 people how to paddle, just on a 10-week period through the summer, and that's in my local lake down in Loggerheads of all places at Kingswood Colomendy. And on top of that, then I've been running adventures at the weekends. So I've been doing coastal paddles, so taking people out around the North Wales coast, trips down the River Dee, adventure trips, and sort of tying in some of my love of like food and the outdoors, and throwing sort of bits of training as well for crazy long distance races in the middle of it. So it has just been an action-packed summer, but I've loved every minute of it.
Oh, fantastic. Wow, the time constraints, it sounds like it's pretty full on. Do you ever sit down and relax at all?
Well, relaxing is probably teaching and paddling for me. Right. I'm always just that's kind of always how I've been. I've always been a real grafter. For me, probably changing that scenery. So from being that intensive desk job, sat there, to what being out on the water, meeting other people, teaching people, it kind of gives me a different end of the spectrum to kind of work with. So I actually find it quite relaxing. And that little bit of physical challenge as well is always really good for your sort of your mental and sort of physical well-being.
Absolutely. Brilliant. So you've got this career you've got your normal day job, and then you transition it. Is it a transition? Are you allowed to say that on the podcast? Is it a transition? Are you looking to move away from your full time and go and do this full time? Is that the?
I think at the moment I have got a lot of things up in the air. So yes is the answer. I am going through a really yeah a reevaluation is probably what I say of where I currently am in my life, in my purpose. I've worked all of my life in the corporate world in a sense. So I've had a job. I kind of didn't go to university as such. I went straight into employment. So I've worked over probably 20 plus years now. And I've always been in that sort of 9 to 5 kind of role. And I just feel that I've done incredibly well in my agricultural and food career, but I feel that I've got another calling. And when I've been working with people, investing time in people, coaching them, particularly sort of my outdoor leadership stuff, it just feels right. It feels natural. So for me, I am really evaluating what those next steps are going to be in 2022. I've got some really exciting plans for SUPlass, and I've been working really hard with the likes of Business Wales to sort of kick on the business to another level, thinking about a bit of a growth kind of mindset with it, and what offer I can do. So for me, this year we've done an awful lot of focus on perhaps beginners, getting people into the sport, almost creating a bit of a following really, and gaining some traction within the industry. But that's not ultimately in my grand plan of things. It's not ultimately where I want to be. And I want to introduce some other themes into paddleboarding. So I think there's much more that you can do other than just paddle around in a circle. So it's introducing different themes, different concepts, different ideas, trying to keep that adventure element, but add a bit of a freshness and a bit of a twist into it.
Yeah, but so would you consider doing, or have you done journeys, so overnight journeys and self-supported stuff?
Well, that's what I'm working to at the moment. So all of my quals I've done through the Water Skills Academy. Been working with the team there, and I'm currently a fully qualified adventure guide. I have just returned from Scotland about 2 weeks ago on my exped qualification training. So that's going to take another 12 months in terms of sort of consolidating some of that learning, gaining further experience, assisting on some further trips. But potentially in the next 12 months, I could be in a position then to look at journeying and carrying kit, going out into more remote kind of environments really, and those river longer journeys, and taking clients out into that environment.
Oh, fantastic. I guess I mean I do a little bit of supping
Okay.
on the occasion, on the odd occasion, but I mean I started out actually in the sea, and I don't know whether that was a bad thing, because
Okay.
just kept falling off, and it's just something that I love doing on a weekend. I wouldn't say that I'm a supper as such, but it's become so popular, hasn't it, in the last couple of years. I wonder whether, people in business often talk about being in the right place at the right time, and I think supping in particular has boomed massively. So I was a few years ago when I was running, well, I still run my own business, but we recognised that there was a boom in cycling. So we didn't really start out doing cycling. We were sort of 50-50. We used to do mountaineering and cycling trips, but then cycling took off. So we then went into cycling. So the business has evolved, and I wonder whether the boom of SUPlass, you were obviously in the right place at the right time. So what did that look like for you, and how did you see that movement? Did you see that boom, that growth, and was there a sort of date at which, was it anything to do with the pandemic, for example, or do you think it's just more general? How do you feel about that?
Well, when I kind of got into it a few years back, I had no intention at all of turning it into a business. And for me, it was just an amazing hobby where I got so much fulfillment out of it. It challenged me in various different ways. It gave me a way to kind of fulfill some of my learning and my curiosity really of the outdoors. And I had no intention really of it becoming that. And actually, before SUPlass, I had another business. So I actually worked. Again, I've always got a side hustle, Tom. So this is a common theme here. I'm one of these girls that always has a side hustle. So I ran for probably about 5 years, and I had the nickname Fodder Lass. So hence why the last bit kind of carried on and turned into SUPlass. But I ran a really successful, award-winning outdoor event kitchen. And I used to do pop-up restaurants in really crazy locations. So in a forest at the top of a mountain, we were in a castle. So my passion for the outdoors and food and sort of really rustic cooking, I've always kind of had. So when I thought about SUPlass, it was kind of how could I bring something, not just the paddleboarding, but bring some other elements into it. So where my bag kind of sits, where my past lies. So it was starting off as a hobby, and then I could see that it was gaining traction in terms of as an industry, as a sport. And I thought, well, there could be something in this. And I did dabble last year with a few kind of adventure cooking things and some adventure trips, but it was almost like people hadn't quite got to that phase. People were still buying boards, people were still learning how to SUP, and probably my offer was a little bit mature for the market. Whereas I'm hoping come next year with some of these ideas, and now people have had sort of 12, 18 months paddle experience under the bag, they may be wanting to explore that little bit more, take a few more risks, mix it up a little bit. That probably what I'm hoping then to offer will fill a little gap in the market.
Amazing, brilliant. And you say obviously you had that other business, and that was your passion. That was the food. You're passionate about food as well, and now you're passionate about supping. So, do you ever feel like there are any? What do you think are the drawbacks of turning your passion into something that you do as a side hustle and then potentially as a full-time job?
Well, I'm always kind of wary of kind of those fatigue elements of like where you do something so much you almost become turned off for it. But I haven't experienced that yet. And I think what I've tried to do, and again pulling back to that food piece, is I actually will take items of food to cook with me, or I will kind of bring some other elements into it, that it isn't just a bog standard paddle. So everything I try and put an adventure twist into it. So you very rarely would see me going up and down the same piece of water. I'm always kind of thinking, well, can I bring my Cali kettle? Can I rustle up some soup? Can I give some people some hot chocolate? And I kind of make it that every trip I do has got a bit of a twist and something interesting. So that probably fulfills my curiosity and my interest. And I hope it does with the people that I paddle with too. But it's actually feels like it's lit something up inside me, something that I haven't had for a long time. And as long as that may continue, I will keep kicking on with SUPlass and keep enjoying it. But I genuinely love every single minute of what I do with it. I love it.
That's wonderful. That is wonderful to hear.
Yeah.
Great. Well, I'm completely sold. I want to come on a SUPlass adventure. I love food. So brilliant. Fantastic. And this podcast is about people who just really have made or not necessarily make a living, but people who have turned their passion for adventure into a source of income. So that could be a side hustle, or it could be a full-time job. And I'm really keen to sort of talk about the nuts and bolts of a business, because I feel that making that step, making that leap of saying, look, I am passionate about X, Y, Z. I'm going to now turn that and ask and see whether people will pay me for that service that I'm going to offer. So I'm just always interested to learn about the the marketing side of things, because ultimately you can be the best guide in the world, or the best photographer, or the best whatever, but until you market yourself and say, look, this is how much this thing costs, will you pay me to do it? So where have you sort of seen your main marketing drives come from?
Well, my main marketing drives and where I've kind of focused myself has sort of predominantly been on social media. But what's been very interesting is kind of the demographics of people that have come through. So when I first started SUPlass, it started off that probably it was split 60-40, and I had sort of a really strong hit in terms of men following me. Then that's now kind of petered out, and it's actually split 51 men and 49% female when I look right across all of my hits across all my various channels. And when I look at my customer base, particularly what I did in the summer, I was hitting really women in their kind of late 30s, early 40s. And I saw a lot of it where they'd maybe recently split up with partners, or they were looking for a new challenge or adventure in life. Or my second kind of demographic was older women, perhaps sort of 60 plus, that kind of see SUP as a safe kind of adventure and something that they wanted to do. So I've been working closer with those kind of demographics of people, and they're the guys that keep coming back and again, like back time and time again, constantly wanting more, asking me what next have I got in my box to offer them. So and they're probably, you know, groups of people that are quite engaged on social media. But I think where I find it quite challenging is, I think, and anybody kind of coming into business, but particularly sort of adventure business, you've got to kind of be a jack of all trades. And this summer, you know, I've had to learn how to build a website myself. I've had to learn about e-commerce. I've actually had some really good support from Business Wales, and I've just been assigned a mentor working with them, and I've got a diagnostic on my on some of the stuff I've been doing there. But trying to balance all these things out, but still be that guide, still be that person out in the water delivering the lessons too, really does, it is a difficult balancing act. And sometimes you think, oh, am I doing it right? Am I doing it well enough? And yeah, you have that. It's quite tough. It is quite tough to do that.
Yeah. Would you say that that's one of your biggest challenges then as a business owner? Is there...
Yeah, because I get frustrated because I can't physically do it all or do it quick enough. So I've got an idea in my head and I think, oh right, yeah. So at the moment, for example, on my website, I want to get like a really like swooshy booking system. And I have like researched, I've been seeing what other people are doing. I've been looking at bolt-ons, add-ons, trying to kind of play it. But I just can't kind of seem to click it of how I want it to work. And I'm one of these, I don't like spending money, so I try and figure it out for myself. But sometimes I think, oh, for God's sake, Caz, just pay somebody to fix it up for you and get it working properly. Because I do worry that I kind of miss out. And I think, you know, people like smooth, easy booking systems, and I worry that, you know, if it's too clunky, people people leave the website. You know, I think we're all guilty of it. Yeah.
It's always a tough one, I find, because, you know, someone who runs a business like yours, do you sort of have, in my head, what I'm thinking is you want a booking system whereby you've got a date and a time, and people can just click on, they can then leave their credit card details and pay a deposit or pay the full amount or whatever, and then you just get a nice little email just to say, oh, so and so's booked on. And that's but so how's it work at the moment then? Is it a bit more clunky?
Well, I had an absolute fun and games with SUP Club. So our SUP Club over the summer, we ran it for 10 weeks, and I was running 3 sessions on a Friday night, 2 beginner sessions and improver sessions. And you know, when you sort of say about like the biggest learning, in my head, I thought, oh, I'm not going to get that many people. And originally I put it as 2 sessions. So I thought, I'll put my 2 sessions out there. And originally I put it for a 6-week period. I thought, you know, that'll be great to get it going, get a bit of interest. And the first week, I have never seen, I thought I'd put a restriction on the website. I put 8 places on each session. The bookings were just coming in and in and in, and people were booking for the whole 6 weeks. I was just like, oh my God, how am I going to cope with this? So before I knew it, 16 places turned into 24. I had to break them into the different slots. Then I just had this like ridiculous spreadsheet trying to like go onto my booking system, transfer everything across. Everybody's then, you know, they're friends, they're with pairs, and you're sort of trying to do this. I'm thinking like, this is just horrific. There's got to be
Yeah.
a better way to do this. So that was my real steep learning curve. And I think it would have been manageable had I not had the level of bookings that I had. Yeah, that's what just sort of blew my head, really.
Because I mean, what a brilliant position to be in, that you've got too many bookings, like, you know, to handle. And yet, yeah, if you haven't got the systems in place, it can become completely unwieldy, can't it?
Well, I remember
Yeah.
sitting down with my partner and saying, it was like a Sunday afternoon. I was like, oh my God, we need to sit down. You need to be on one laptop. I'm going to be the other. We're going to have to just call these out and like double, triple check. Because I
Wow.
don't like getting it wrong. So I was thinking, oh, I couldn't
Yeah.
bear, you know, somebody missing out. But yeah, that is the steepest learning curve.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Well, I'll just ask a couple of questions then, right, about the business in general. What do you feel like has been your biggest mistake that you've made since the
Probably
first?
that one.
So probably that one, not having that system. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that being prepared on that, and I think some of it, if I was to go back again, you know, I got there in the end, but particularly the website, and say my partner was really great, and we managed to sort of figure it out. But there were many kind of late nights, and sometimes I think perhaps if I just paid somebody or worked with somebody a little bit more. So that's what I'm working on now. But perhaps that in the earlier days would have looked after me a little bit better and taken a bit of the stress out. That's some good advice. Get it done properly.
Oh, brilliant. That's a very nice problem to have. I'm sure some people are listening going, I would love to have that problem. But yeah. And what's the sort of wackiest or the craziest job that you've done, as in since you started this, embarked upon this? Has there been any sort of standout things that you thought, oh, this is pretty wild?
I wouldn't use perhaps the word wild, but I think in terms of wacky, I'm thinking I'm getting paid for this. This is like amazing. Um, I got actually invited up to Newcastle. So with my background being food, and I've done a lot of work in terms of running food businesses, food hygiene, you know, developing ideas and concepts and taking it through to commercial. So I was contacted by a friend of mine who is a consultant in the outdoor industry and said, look, you know, I've got a group of consultants. They're up in, no, sorry, a group of instructors. They're up in the Northeast. They're all desperate to run a food offering on their paddleboards. They have no idea of where to start. Do you fancy going up and do a few days work for them? I was like, yeah, brilliant. So I went up there. So I spent 2 days on the River Tyne, basically just cooking, and we had like every type of stove you could imagine. We had every kind of like food and different products, and literally it was paddleboarding and just sat on a bank just making concept menus ready for these instructors to take out. So it probably is quite wacky really when you think of that, and in terms of that environment, and it just, they launched it. We had a huge amount of press off the back of it, and they've invited me back up again in January to sort of refurb some of the menus for next year. But it was just one of those things. I was like, wow, this is like my two passions and I'm getting paid for this. This is so cool.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really interesting concept, this. I read somewhere recently that combining two passions is often the best way to go, because that's a perfect way of you differentiating yourself. Because again, you can be the best SUP instructor in the world, but why does that differentiate you? Well, you've got a real big passion for food, so combine those two together, and suddenly you've immediately differentiated yourself in the market. That's brilliant, and that job sounds absolutely fantastic.
It's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. So at the end of, I want to be respectful of your time. So at the end of each of the podcasts, I'd like to ask 3 final questions for a bit of continuity, so people can take away the same or similar thing from the podcast. So the first one is, what piece of advice would you give to yourself? I've said here 10 years ago, but I realise obviously you sort of a lot has happened, and you've had a massive. It's only been in the last sort of year that you've embarked on this journey, but I'm sure there's something 10 years ago that what sort of advice would you have given to yourself?
I think, and particularly, I think with the scenario where I am now, I think it would have been having that self-belief in yourself and following that passion earlier. And it doesn't matter, I think, whatever kind of realm or industry that you're in. I think if there is something that really is strong within you, and you find yourself your calling, and sometimes it does take a bit of time to really have that confidence to go for it. Because sometimes for me, I do have quite a lot of battles with self-doubt and kind of thinking, oh, am I good enough, and sort of questioning that. And I think probably, yeah, that advice from 10 years ago to me would be, for God's sake, Caz, kick on, get on with it. There's nothing actually to really, what you're worrying over. And I think where I am now, it's given me so much, just so much self-belief, really.
Brilliant. That is a great piece of advice. Yeah, in the words of Nike, just do it. Just actually do it.
Yeah.
What's the worst that could happen? Brilliant. Number 2, what valuable resource, for example, it could be a book, YouTube channel, piece of equipment, blog, podcast app, or other, can you recommend to help others considering following a similar path to yours?
For me, it's buy a Kelly kettle.
Buy a Kelly kettle. Brilliant.
I was gifted my Kelly kettle off my dad a good number of years ago, and it was the one that he used to have fishing 30 years ago back in Ireland. And he gave it to me, and it had some nice chunks of aluminium and things in it. It wasn't good, so I did a bit with it, and then that got picked up by Kelly Kettle, and then they've actually worked with me now. So everywhere I go, I take my Kelly kettle, and if it's making soup or cups of hot chocolate or cups of tea for people, I'm never anywhere. I even went on the X-Ped up in Scotland. I sacrificed a pair of shoes for my Kelly kettle.
That's pretty extreme. Wow.
So it was, I had cold, wet feet, but I was warm inside, and it's that kind of thing, really. So for me, that's been an amazing bit of kit. But yeah, just go and get some really good advice. So for me, it was working with Water Skills Academy. It's get some really good training, find somebody that you can work with that can mentor and inspire you. It's really important. Yeah.
Fantastic. That's great advice. And I'm sure no one will ever say Kelly kettle again, or maybe they will. Maybe they will. They are a cracking bit of kits. Yeah, absolutely brilliant. Question 3 then. What would you like to see change about the industry and the adventure industry as a whole, if anything?
Well, I'd like to think a little bit of what I'm doing really is kind of encourage the adventure industry perhaps to break out of its some of its more traditional molds. So I think we've got a really exciting opportunity. I think with what COVID has done, it's really put adventure in the UK, particularly, under spotlight. People have got hunger, people have got an interest in it. So how can we capitalise, keep being innovative, and keep adding to that offer? So I think my advice would be kind of not stick too much to our laurels and what we've always done. Where can we be fresh? Where can we be innovative as an industry? And how can we keep kind of serving those customers and keep that interest in?
Brilliant. Wonderful. Well, thank you ever so much for taking the time to be on the podcast. If people want to find out a little bit more about what you're doing, and connect with you, where's best to do that?
Well, various social media channels, so Facebook and Instagram. So you can look up SUP Lass Adventures on there. So I'm pretty active on both of those channels, so you can track me down. My website, so I've got SUPlass.com. Or you can just drop me an email, really, but I'm always happy to hear from people or hook up and collaborations and different things. So yeah, give me a shout.
Brilliant. Well, thanks ever so much for your time, Caz, and I'm sure we'll be in touch maybe for a round 2 in the future. All the best.
No problem. Thanks, Tom. Take care.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.